Welcome back to another episode of The Debrief. Myself, Eric Immesberger, retired ATF, and JP Cassidy, retired NYPD. So for you outstanding listeners that have been keeping track of the Debrief series, what do we like to do? Pull the curtain back on our world and let you see something that you would normally never hear about, never see. I can find it on YouTube. And tonight, we're going to be talking about the ATF Academy that I went through. And then after I was on ATF a few years and I went through selection and got accepted into the Special Response Team program as an operator, which is ATF's version of a SWAT team. So going to tell you about both of those schools. And again, pulling the curtain back and giving you a glimpse of how that training really worked. So I jumped on board ATF in August of 1998. In that period of time, people got hired as an ATF agent, and just about 99% of us had been police officers, had been detectives, had been a federal agent somewhere else. So when you got hired on day one, you got sworn in at the federal courthouse, you got issued your credentials and your badge. They took you right to the range. They qualified you. You got issued your 2 ATF handguns. You got issued a ATF G-Ride, a government car. G-Ride is what we called it. And you were off to the races. You were put in a group, and you were just another guy in the group at a on-the-job training agent, but you were fully functional as an ATF agent. And it was 3 months before I got, almost 3 months, about 2.5 months before I actually got shipped down to the ATF Academy in Glencoe, Georgia, the southeast tip bottom of Georgia, at a little place called FLETC, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. And it's where every federal agency trains, with the exception of the FBI and the DEA. Both of those agencies, their academies are on Quantico, on the Marine Corps military base. But about 70 plus other agencies, federal agencies, law enforcement, criminal investigators, all train at FLETC. And FLETC had been a naval air station in World War II. So it's a massive piece of property. There's a lot of military remnants still on there. So back when I was in that academy, 98, 99, we were using military housing from like the 50s and 60s as our raid houses. And there were neighborhoods of these houses. So, it worked out. And it's completely different today. How was it when I got in? So when I got in 98, and I actually got sent to the academy in October of 98. Again, I had been running around for 2.5 months and now going to the academy. Today, the way it works is you get hired, you're at your post of duty for maybe a day or two. You get a report date at the academy. You have no credentials, no badge, no gun. You don't get those things until you do the stage walk on graduation day. And then you're considered officially no longer a trainee, and you're an ATF agent. Back in my day, it was different. So, and comically different, and in some ways more different also. So the ATF Academy is broken up into 2 phases. The first phase is about 9 weeks long. It's called the Criminal Investigator Training Program, CITP. Although you're with ATF, you go through this 9-week CITP course, which is actually run by the FLETC staff, not the ATF staff. So it's considered a basic investigators academy. We're going to teach you, it's going to be crawl, walk, run. We're going to assume that you have 0 experience, even though everybody in my class had been a cop or detective or a federal agent for at least 10 years on average. So we were a salty group. And most people would complain, hey, we're not really getting the crazy academy experience. However, it was a regimented schedule which was nice. It was a 8 a.m. to like 5 p.m. You worked a few Saturdays. It was a very cookie cutter course. They gave you the 9-week schedule in a book, so you knew exactly what you were going to be doing every single day. It was a little different on once you graduated CITP and actually started the ATF Academy. So, however, you were still under the watchful eye of an ATF Academy program manager. So that was a senior agent, came out of the field working at the academy full time, but that's the one person that's in charge of your class. How big are these classes? 24 people. That's it. Every single ATF class, 24 people. Why 24? There's only 24 seats in the classrooms that ATF uses down there. I'm like, can't we get a bigger classroom? But, that's one of those, this is the way we've always done it responses. And it's probably, I would bet it's exactly the same today. Although when I was down there, they were starting up a new ATF class probably about every 3 weeks. In 98 and 99, it was the biggest hiring ATF had done in probably 15 years at least. And before I went to the academy in October 98, they had not had an ATF Academy probably for about 4 or 5 years. So the ATF had they changed the curriculum around to just bring it right to the edge of what they felt we needed. But the first 9 weeks, kind of cookie cutter set program. However, when the ATF Academy started, like we graduated CITP on a Friday, started ATF Academy on a Monday, and that training manager came in to give us like the real talk when we were in the ATF seat. And this was the talk. This is a gentleman's academy. There's going to be no screaming. There's going to be no yelling. And we're not going to stress you out. You're going to stress yourself out because here are the standards. And if you want to stay in training and you want to stay in ATF in the pipeline, these are the standards you're going to meet. This is what is expected of you. And it is 100% on you to make certain that you meet the standards. So that was a little shocking. And he was 100% right. Also on CITP, we stayed in academy housing on the FLETC base. When we started the ATF school in January of 99, they said, hey, no more room at the inn. We're going to put your entire class in a Holiday Inn for 4 months, to 1 or 2 exits away north on I-95. So now you had to have a car. You have to drive from the Holiday Inn. You got to get on the base. And you would think in some ways it was good because you had your own room and you had your own bathroom, which was different from the academy base housing. And they were trying to keep up with the just massive federal hirings that were going on for all these agencies. And they were building just multi-story dormitory stuff just to keep up with the people coming in. And everything, like the clock matters at the ATF Academy. When you're told, and the ATF Academy started at 7 a.m. and it went to 7 p.m. And that was the schedule for 4 months, and a few Saturdays thrown in there and some late nights thrown in there too. But you had to leave the Holiday Inn. You had to get through the security of the main gate, which was pretty much run like anybody that's been on a military base going through the main gate to actually get on the FLETC compound. So you had to give yourself 15, 20 minutes just to get through the conga line of not only all the students that are trying to get there, but all the people that work on the base that are trying to get there. So, and then you got to find parking at whatever building you're starting your day out at. So staying at the base housing had some advantages, but staying at the Holiday Inn probably had a few more advantages. I don't think an ATF class is ever allowed to stay at the Holiday Inn again. Not that we were, troublemakers, but, I guess maybe we were viewed as troublemakers. But anyway, again, that training manager set the tone, and the tone was set every single day. It's like, this is what we're doing. This is what's expected of you. And if you want to stay here, not only keep up, but excel in everything. And the main things that could get you bounced out of there, if you became deficient in the physical training standards, deficient in the firearms standards, safety standards, if you commit a range safety violation, you could easily get terminated out of the academy and at ATF. The academic standard was huge. So it doesn't sound like much, but I believe the minimum you could get on a written exam, an official exam, I believe was an 80. If you got below an 80, you were allowed to retake that exam. If you got below an 80 a second time, you were terminated from training and thrown out of ATF. And once you got below 80 on any exam, you could never get below 80 on any other exam. Otherwise, you would be academically thrown out and looking for a new job. So not that anybody was really worried about getting below an 80, but you were kind of worried. So the studying you get done with a 7 p.m. day, and then you're going to go to the chow hall. You are doing everything you need to prepare for whatever training evolution is the next day. And you got to study every night. You got to keep up on, these are crazy laws that we never dealt with as cops, the arson laws, the federal explosive laws, all of the procedural things that you're going to have to know how to do as a federal agent. You have to keep up on all this stuff. And these were like binders, like telephone books for every one of these courses that you were taking. Crazy. The academics were something that you really had to stay on top of. And they had an honor code at the ATF Academy. So what's the first thing all of us did? Making index cards. You're trying to study index cards every night. And they made it known, do not pass your study material on to the class that's coming in behind you. We're going to consider that a violation for you to do that. We can consider it a violation for them to have it from a student that's further down the road in training. So the message was, you're going to do your own work, period. And you're not going to take study guides. You're not going to take anything from anybody. It's got to be your work, period. And on the first part of the academy, in my class, we actually did have a trainee terminated from ATF for not doing his own work on a search warrant affidavit, a practice affidavit that we were doing. So they were dead serious about the honor code. You don't lie, cheat, or steal, and you don't tolerate anybody that does that. You're expected to make that known. You're not going to tolerate that. If you're doing that in the academy, what are you going to do when you're working by yourself out in the field? So it was a serious standard, and I'm positive that the standard is exactly being held the same today. So having said all that stuff, on the ATF portion of the academy, this started early in too. They said, we are cutting physical training out of your curriculum. And there were about 9 weeks of physical training that had been blocked off. And these are, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours. They're like, we don't have time to tie up any minutes of the day with physical training. We expect you to continue to exceed the standards, but you're going to do that on your own time. Get up at 4:30 and PT, do it when you get out of here after 7 o'clock at night. I was an early morning guy with a few of the other fellas, and we got together 4:30, 5 o'clock. We would go on our runs, do PT, shower up real quick, go to the chow hall, get breakfast, get to class before 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock meant that the class starts at 7 o'clock. You better be there 10 minutes before that to get yourself squared away and do whatever you got to do. So being on time was a big deal, because out in the field, being on time is a big deal. And talking about physical training, one thing that was done on day one reporting to the academy is you got a physical efficiency battery test. There were like 5 events. And if you didn't meet the ATF standard or the FLETC standard, you were not even at the academy 12 hours, and your stuff was in a shopping cart. You were going back to your car and you were terminated. You were out of a job, and you haven't even completed one sleep cycle yet at the academy. So the physical part of the job was considered a big deal. And again, these are the standards. Make sure you're showing up on day one far exceeding those standards. And back when I got hired, there was no physical test administered as part of the process. It was just like, these are the standards. You have to meet them, or, what are you doing here? And they were tested on day one. You didn't have to be an Olympic athlete, but you had to be in shape to meet all of the stuff that they wanted you to do. So it was good. I thought it was great. And I was the second oldest guy in the class. It's like I should have been the second biggest complainer. I was like the cheerleader. I'm like, this is great. I want to build a house right here. Now, the gym facility at the academy, absolute Olympic world class. Massive gym building, fight rooms, mat rooms, free weight rooms, machine rooms, a few basketball courts, you name it, they had it. And then when you step outside, a full padded track, obstacle courses on the outside of the track. And now what they do on the inside of the track is everything is this cross fitness push. There's just free weights everywhere. And there's a dip station and a pull-up station that probably 50 people at a time can be doing dips, another 50 on the pull-up bars. And then there's got to be at least 20 or 30 fighting mannequins put throughout the inside field of the track. So you can go from CrossFit exercises to now you're fighting the mannequin, back to CrossFit, back to the track. You just keep going until you lose your mind. But they had it down to a system. So when you walk through the door, you got issued shorts, t-shirt, socks, and you had like 60 seconds to get changed out. And the same thing in reverse. When you got done with the PT class, you turn all that stuff in. So every time you showed up at the gym, which was 7 days a week. So if you had off time, you had the weekends, you could still use every single one of the inside and outside facilities. I thought it was great. They just ran it well. And as far as food goes, they're feeding a few thousand people a day between staff and the instructors and the trainees from all these agencies. I thought the food was awesome. The only people that complained about the food were people that never had to have bought food in the real world. It's like they're giving us every meal for months. This is great. Don't have to pay for anything. And you could eat healthy, or you could literally eat yourself into a fat body. There was everything. There was super healthy food, salad station, pasta station. There was always chicken, always vegetables, but there was a big dessert station. You could literally eat yourself into fatness if you tried. You could eat healthy like everybody else. So one interesting thing, so they cut 9 weeks of physical training out. Why? What did they plug in? Well, this is what ATF plugged in. 1 week of high-speed driving. So there's a 3-mile paved course that there's got to be 100 vehicles, typically Crown Vics that they had, teaching you how to drive. So in this 3-mile course, every part of the course tested a specific skill. And there was a monitor in a tower at every single one of the spots. So they would be able to talk over the radio to you in the car. Hey, do this, do that. Don't do this, don't do that. We didn't roll any cars. We didn't wreck any cars, but we came close. It was a phenomenal driving school. Just the skills of how to make a car do about anything that you needed it to do, and responding to real emergencies, how to safely operate that car, accident avoidance. Then next to the 3 mile track, they had a huge flat paved massive parking lot's the best way to describe it. And they had vehicles where the brakes were remote controlled by instructors. So you would go onto this parking lot. They had these massive hoses. They could soak it to simulate wet roadways. And they would say, hey, you have to be at 40 miles an hour on this particular exercise. And let's say you had to make a very controlled but hard left-hand turn, and you're on the brakes. They had the ability to turn your brakes off. What are you going to do? Now you have no brakes. What are you going to do? Or they had the ability to remote control, put like the left front brake locked up, and it's going to cause the car to go into a bit of an uncontrolled maneuver. How do you recover from that? Super well run. It was, I think about the skills that they taught us. It was great. And then there was a cone course. Very beginning of the driving school, there was a cone course, and it literally probably had 5,000 cones. And it had, again, all these little things that you had to do. So you had to go through the cone course driving straight. And then when you got to the end of it, you had to drive backwards through the entire course. And of course, us New Yorkers, we were trying to drive it as fast as we could without knocking down any cones. Like, hey, we're expert city drivers. This is our zone. This is our living room right here. So that was kind of funny to us. It wasn't funny to the instructors. They saw no funny in anything. A bunch of kids, guys, from the Northeast, from New York City, Boston, and these good old boys from Georgia that, they're all retired cops down there, but they're like half NASCAR drivers. And they're the ones that are teaching us how to, it was like the clash of culture. It was pretty funny. We always invited them to, the end of school party, and, everybody was friends. It was great. So another big thing in the ATF Academy, aside from all those little things we talked about, is tactics, firearms training, movement, close quarters, countermeasures. So the average ATF agent going through the ATF Academy was probably trained up about to the level of any SWAT officer in the United States in police departments. And I know that's a bold statement, but it's true. The amount of time that was spent on weapons manipulation, movement through tactical houses, simunition training, medical training, there was a crazy amount of time spent on that, a lot of time. And you could always tell an agent that just got out of the ATF Academy. So now they're back in the field, they're back in the group, they got to go to quarterly qualifications with everybody else. You could pick out the new people because they were literally machines, weapon manipulation machines. It was almost robotic movements with superb accuracy on target. It was just, the Academy produced mechanics when it came to firearms platforms, the pistol, the shotgun, the M4, the MP5, all of it. Like, bravo, well done. They spent a lot of time on that. And they realized that that was going to be a big part of enforcement. All your enforcement activities, you're not calling anybody else. You're doing your enforcement activities. And you had to be able to be proficient to respond to problems on deals where the undercover's being robbed, if something's gone wrong, you need to quickly and appropriately respond to that stuff. So we need people that are trained up to a standard that are going to be able to do that. So that was an excellent part of the academy. There was, towards the end of the academy, that's called field operations training. And what they try to recreate, again, it's even better now than what I'm going to describe that I had back in 1999. Field operations training, what the academy tried to replicate was a real enforcement group. You're not in the academy anymore. We're breaking you up into 7, 8 people. You're an enforcement group. You're a posted duty out in the field. And we're going to fly in group supervisors from groups around the country. That's your boss for the next few weeks while we're doing field operations. And it is the crawl, walk, run. They're gonna train you up on, okay, we have to meet an informant and he's going to set up a deal. So we have to plan that. We have to figure out how do you do that and then actually do it. When I was there were, again, these neighborhoods of military housing, old military housing. We used it. We thought it was great. There was also a bar that ATF had built down there, a bar specifically for training, because again, a lot of our deals started in bars. You're going to meet so-and-so at a bar, or you're going to go to a bar with this group. And so we had our own bar down there. It was great. Not to drink, but to train. Well, now, so this is now, FLETC has actually built a city, not a 2-road training compound, a literal city streets, congested stores, strip mall, strip stores, and then neighborhoods of actual houses, neighborhoods of them. So you can simulate everything that you need to know how to do a moving surveillance, how to do a static surveillance, how to do these undercover deals, cover deals, all of it conducted in a realistic town/city with 4 million video cameras everywhere you are. So everything that you do can later be looked at on video and critiqued. Okay, good job on this, or let's try and do this the next time, stuff like that. Just superbly run. If you're going to make mistakes, make them in training, learn from them. And, you're going to be a competent product when you graduate and you're going out and actually doing it for real with the people in your group. So superbly run. And that's the way it was when I was down there in 99. I know it was very similar because I came back as that group supervisor with a group of trainees, and we're going to run this just like a real group. And that was, several years after I got out. It was still the same. I'm sure it's the same today, but better. There's always this push to make the next class better, make the next class better. So in our firearms training, before you fire a bullet, you dry fire and dry fire and dry fire. Every movement to the holster, from the holster, retention, low ready, high ready, scanning, it's all done dry fire, because live fire is merely an evaluation of how competent was your dry fire training. And so we came up, my class, and I'm sure other classes said it too, but when it was the next class coming through, we would tell the instructors not one press less for this crew coming behind us. Because if you think about this, it doesn't really sink in unless you actually try to do it. But if you put on your entry vest, all your tactical gear, obviously empty firearms, empty magazines, but everything that you're going to have in the field, you're going to have on you. Take the gun from the holster, bring it out, low ready, bring it up to fire, do 3 trigger presses, dry fire, scan left, scan right, look, back to retention, look again, back to the holster. Do that for 30 minutes non-stop. And you've got at least one instructor for every 2 trainees. There's no escaping the eyes. They've seen it all, they've done it all. And anybody that is not 110% effort is punished on the spot. And they, at least in my class, they made little notes as this 2-hour dry fire was going on. Everybody's got their own little pond of sweat on the floor in front of them. And they would say, well, we observed this problem. We observed this You've been instructed to how to do this. It wasn't done by one or two people. So you people owe me 200 push-ups. And they would say, we'll just sit here and watch you do them. Do them any way you want. Do 200 straight, do 100 and 100, do 50, 4 times. But you're going to do every single one. And by the way, every single one is going to be perfect, because it could be, and and everybody had to do them together. So I think we typically did sets of 25. It was down, up, 1, down, up, 2. Or an instructor would say 2, 2, 2. In other words, somebody didn't do a perfect push-up, do it again. Oh, you lose count? Oh, I guess we don't know how to count anymore. Let's start at 0. The count is now 0. So 200 push-ups may turn into 300 push-ups, 300 perfect push-ups, with all your gear on. It was good. It was energetic, to say the least. So when we said not one press less for the class coming in behind us, we were dead serious. Not one press less. It was great. So on to a little bit of the fun and games at the academy, if you could call it. But one good thing is that when the training day, the official training day ended, the time was yours. There was no harassment, no new guy shenanigans, none of that stuff. It's like when the training officially ended for the day was yours. You got to do laundry. You got to go get gas for your car. You got to go get something to eat. You got to study. You got to get your, materials ready for every evolution that you have to do the next day. So they may say we ended the training day at 7 p.m., but it might not have ended for you till like 11 o'clock. And then you back up at 4:30 the next morning, doing it all over again. Some Saturdays we had to work also. That was fine. But if we didn't have any commitment for a Saturday or Sunday in the ATF part of the academy, this is what I and several others did. We would get together at like maybe 8 o'clock Saturday morning, and we would do a death run. We called it a death run. It was run PT, run PT, run PT, just for a while. And we would do the entire perimeter of FLETC. It's like thousands and thousands of acres, this facility. We would do the perimeter, and then we would end it by the chow hall. We go in, we get a great free chow, back to the hooch, shower, change, pack a small bag, and we were on the road. By 12 noon, we were on the road, and we were either going to go to Savannah, Georgia, which is literally one of the most beautiful cities in America. If you have the chance to visit Savannah, do so. If you are looking for just the neatest place to live, that's the place. Savannah was awesome. Or we would go to Jacksonville, Florida. We would go to Daytona. On the weekends, it was like, hey, we trained hard, and now we're gonna play hard too. So we would, throw 7 or 8 of us into a hotel room just so we had some place just to like fall on the floor on Saturday night. And we would go out and do all the fun stuff Saturday. We'd find like an outdoor bar. We'd find sports on TV at a bar. It was, or you could go to the beach, whatever. And then Saturday night, we would just, we were gonna have a good time on Saturday nights. Sunday morning, put yourself back together, make sure your car didn't get stolen, good breakfast, back to the base, do it all over again. It was a good time. And so getting back to the base at FLETC, so there was a police department. Well, FLETC had its own police department. So you had the base police, and then you had outside the base, Glenn County Police. And it seemed to us that there was a bounty on FLETC students, because every weekend there were going to be some FLETC students that got grabbed for DWI. So that was hammered into us on day one. If you're going to go out drinking, you better have a designated driver, like a real designated driver. There's no, these cops down there, we almost felt that there was absolutely nothing going on crime-wise, and it was simply how many DWIs can everybody get each night. So here's an exclusive. Talk about pulling back the curtain. So remember when I said I was a supervisor, I would come down for field training. a few weeks at the end of the academy. So there was a supervisor I know, he's retired now, but he went down there as a class coordinator. So he was down there for like 2 months to be sort of the supervisory ATF guy in the back of the room, that if any of these students had, any questions, they could talk to a guy that wasn't like really an instructor. He wasn't base personnel. He was sort of like somebody you could talk to. So my pal, very energetic, full of life guy, and he drove a Crown. He drove the ATF, his G-Ride, his Crown Vic down to Georgia for these few weeks, months. And every class throws an absolute rager graduation party when you graduate the ATF Academy. If you're going to typically, you graduate on a Friday morning. So Thursday night is going to be that party, or maybe Wednesday night, the night before. Well, anyway, my buddy, and there's a no fraternization party. Like, as ATF agents or instructors, we're not supposed to be hanging out with the class. We're not supposed to be drinking with them. We're not, it's supposed to be this separation. But my buddy decided, well, they're out of beer. So, I'll get more, which turned into a trip to St. Simon's Island and one of the bars down there. So he had a trainee with him, and they've both been drinking. They go walk towards the ATF Crown Vic in the parking lot. Now it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And a Glenn County officer on a bicycle says, "Hey, it's out-of-state play. It's Crown Vic. Are you guys with Fletzy?" My buddy goes, "Yeah, I'm ATF agent teaching down here. Hey, I think you've been drinking too much. Don't drive." "Okay, yeah, we'll get a taxi." They actually tried to call a taxi. Well, it's not like New York City where you can get a taxi at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like no taxi place is going to be available. So my buddy looks left, he looks right, and he's like, I don't feel I'm that bad. I think I can drive back to the base. And he starts driving. He drives like 50 yards, and this bicycle cop was in bushes, just watching and waiting. So my buddy in a Crown Vic got pulled over by a guy on a bicycle, dring, dring, little red light, and he got arrested for DWI from a guy on a bicycle. Crazy. It happens, and he was not the first ATF agent to be in that predicament, and probably not the last. But now that's somewhat of a career ender. Back then, it was just a temporary career ender, like temporarily for 45 days. You're not going to get a paycheck. You're not going to be doing anything. We're not going to fire you, though. But now, it's a little harsher now. But that was an adventure. So the ATF Academy was robust. It was good. As a matter of fact, the best way to put it is you had to want to be there to get out of there. You did not want to ride the razor on any one of these standards. You didn't want to, be just barely passing anything. You want to be exceeding everything, so you didn't have those worries. But you had to want to be there. You had to want the job, because if somebody just, didn't have the fire to be there, they would not put up with all of the, they just wouldn't put up with everything. They wouldn't succeed. So you had to want to be there. So now, fast forward, I've been an ATF agent now for a few years, and the special response team typically once a year would have a selection process if you wanted to try to join the special response team program, part of our special operations division. We have 5 teams in the United States. They're quartered in Virginia, Dallas, Lauderdale, Detroit, and LA. 5 teams. So again, much like the academy, they said, here are the standards to apply. And the first thing you had to do was submit a written application, and it had to be endorsed by your immediate boss, the assistant special agent in charge, and the special agent in charge, just to put your name in the hat to go through the selection process. So I got all those things, and everybody that was trying out knew that the selection process was going to include a review of your casework. In other words, the SRT program did not want anybody that was just barely doing the job. Expected superior performance as an SRT operator. They expect superior performance as a criminal investigator. As they put it, nobody becomes an ATF agent just to become a SWAT guy. You join ATF to be a criminal investigator. Everything else the job offers is after you've proven yourself that you can put cases together, complex cases, and do all of that stuff. So, and I, along with everybody else that was applying, certainly met that standard. And then there's the unstated standard. So the list comes out of everybody that put in on paper and got all the required signatures. That list goes out to every single SRT operator nationwide. And all it takes is one guy to say, that guy is not a team player. That person, not a good pick for the team, and especially not a good pick for what we do. And here's why. You can't just say it. You have to say, and here's why. And then the panel that's in charge of selecting people to be accepted into the training program, they'll take that into account. And that did come into play with a few people, and appropriately came into play where not a good pick for these reasons. And it wasn't a good pick. But a lot of people just didn't make it through selection. And part of the selection was being able to follow written instructions. In other words, okay, you've made it through the paper process. Now you're going to show up and you're going to be graded on a physical efficiency battery, and you have to go through a firearms qualification course on every weapon system that you have in ATF. So the physical efficiency test was not on paper considered super difficult, but again, those were minimum standards, and you were expected to not be anywhere close to the minimum standard. You had to exceed them. And for months, we made certain that when we were doing the run with several tasks in the run, that we were able to crush that time standard, the pull-up standard, the 40-yard dash, which doesn't sound like anything, but you got to start laying flat on the ground with a shotgun, get up. And there were only, I don't know if it was 4 or it was a tight time to do a 40-yard dash from the ground with a shotgun, get up and get to the finish line. It was not impossible, but it was, you had to move and don't slip and don't fall. Attention to detail in everything. So I got through all of that, and my SRT basic school was held at the Blackwater compound in Moyock, North Carolina. And this is pre 9/11. So not really anybody knew the Blackwater name. It was a absolute top shelf tactical training environment, live fire shoot house, huge live fire shoot house that could be manipulated, changed, rooms changed, hallways changed. It was multi-floor. The ranges, great, and all kinds of other tactical shooting stations, movement stations, land navigation stations. It was just top notch. And it was put together, it was the brainchild of a guy, Eric Prince, who was a former Navy SEAL. And if you ever listen to him, he's got a lot of interviews that he's done on YouTube, podcasts. Unbelievable intellect, not to mention excellent in every other facet too. But the intellect of this guy is just, he has a grasp on what's going on worldwide. Super interesting individual. But when we got down there for training started 4:00 Monday morning. So Sunday night was the brief-in, gear issue brief-in. And I remember the school was run by a guy named Mike Hayes. He was the person in charge. He was the team leader for Special Response Team 2, East Coast, United States. He was a former Marine officer. He had been a recon Marine, super tough, but super nice. And really, I mean, he was hilarious, but he was serious, hilarious. Good dude. So he went through a very serious brief with us and he said, okay, you got this far in the process. You're here. And here's the 20 things that will get you thrown out of here in 1 second flat. Show up to a training evolution without every single piece of gear that you're supposed to have. Safety violation. And the list just went on and on and on. So much like the academy, there was a chow hall at Blackwater, and we would we'd be up, I think, about 4:30 in the morning. We would have a few hours of close quarter countermeasure training, hands-on. Somebody would be in the fist suit and it was hands-on for a few hours. You had an hour for chow, and then the training day would start, and it would go to about 10 o'clock every night. It was awesome. And they knew, just like any other SWAT program, the basic school is a basic school. It is to put you through the tactics, the movement, and the tactic and movement package was precisely the same as when you were an ATF agent, but on steroids. It was quicker, smarter, just every movement of your body was for a purpose, a deliberate purpose in entries, in vehicle takedowns, you name it. So the ATF standard, which was very high for every agent, and then the standards became much, much higher and finer detail for an operator on the SRT. And it started for me on day one. So when day one started with a PT test, the same PT test you had to do to get through selection, everybody did that test again. And on day one, and anybody that didn't meet the standard by 1 second or one pull up or whatever, you were in your car before the sun came up and you were on the way home and you were, reapply in a year. Everybody I showed up with made it through the test again. Again, it was the minimum standard test. You were expected to exceed it, but nobody came anywhere close to not meeting the standard of what was required to get you down there to begin with. Other classes, they've had one or two people that just missed a time. They're like, hey, thanks for coming down. See you in a year if you want to try again. And the standard was the standard. And I got a good story for that. But on day one, get through the CQC training, I'm at chow. So like everybody else, I grab a tray. And before I can even get close to the food or anything else, Mike Hayes, the guy that is the coordinator for the school, and if I make it through training, he is going to be my team leader. And he just starts talking to me like a regular guy. And I'm, it's the head guy that I'm talking to. So I'm trying to be polite. The eye contact, I'm looking, I'm talking, and we're moving through the line. I'm grabbing food. I get to the end of the line. I'm about to go to a table to sit down. And I realized that I didn't grab a fork. I made the mistake of saying, oh, I got to go grab a fork. The moment stopped. Time stopped. Everybody stopped talking because Mike went into from nice, normal conversation to dead serious conversation and loud. And it was, if you had your head up and you were aware of your surroundings and you were looking around and looking at everything around you, you would have seen the forks. You would have seen where they are and you would have known to grab one. You would have grabbed one as we were moving, as we were talking, and you failed to do that. Don't let that happen again. Know what's going on around you. This is over just by not grabbing a fork in the chow line. Everybody's looking at me. They're like, sorry you're going through that, but glad it's not us. Look, JP, that was 2001. This is 2026. I remember it like it was this morning. And I never missed a fork again. It was a fantastic lesson. At the end of week one, so this is a Friday morning, the end of week one, we had what's called a cold qual, meaning You've been up since 4:30. You've done CQC. You've done chow. Report to the firing line at, I think it was 8 a.m. And you're going to have a pistol qualification, the ATF pistol qualification. Now, the way ATF runs a pistol qualification is the way it is on paper, meaning once the gun is in the holster, you cannot manipulate it. You cannot do a magazine exchange while it's in the holster. Nobody tells you to reload. An ATF firearms qualification is you're in charge of your weapon. We treat it as if you're in the field, you're in a gunfight. You're in charge of making sure you have a loaded weapon at all times, and you're doing your magazine changes when you have to. And if you have a malfunction, that you instantly clear that malfunction and you're back in the fight. And that's just on a training qualification. It's treated like the real world. There's no raising your hand. I have something wrong with my gun. If anybody did that, they would have a big problem, because you're expected to fix your problem, just like in real life, work the problem. So we run through a cold pistol qual, meaning you show up on the line and we run through it. And the times, like you have 3 seconds to go from the holster to fire your shots, it's 3 seconds is the max, not 3.5, not 4, not, the whistle goes off and, there's still a bang or two. None of that. You would be just failed. Go, leave, done. Everybody in the class, we all knew each other, and everybody liked everybody. One of our guys shoots an 89, because the SRT standard is a 90 minimum on every single weapon system. You cannot shoot below a 90. He shoots an 89. The instructors go down. There are 3 or 4 of them examining his target, counting every hole. And they write, 89. And they tell everybody, all right, put your weapons away, back to the classroom for the next, whatever we were supposed to be doing. So we all go into the classroom, and the agent that had shot the 89 is not there, and all his stuff is already off his desk. So Mike comes into the room, and he says, one of your guys shot, he didn't meet the standard, and we're sending him home. So Mike, he's a smart guy, and he goes, does anybody have any heartburn about that? Well, foolishly, some of us did have some. We were like, hey, this guy's a good dude. It's an 89. It's like, let him shoot again. I'm like, he's a good dude. Several of us were saying that. And Mike is just kind of smiling and listening to everybody. And when we had all had our little say for 20 seconds, and he just said, okay, I've heard enough. And then he went into dead serious mode, and he goes, an 89 is an 89. The standard is 90. Start the next class. Turned to the instructor that was going to do the next class, and he walked out of the room, and he goes, we all hit the replay button in our head. An 89 is an 89. It's not the standard. And it just became something that we had in our head for every moment that we were in the SRT. It's a very difficult position to get. It's difficult to successfully get through the training, as it should be. But once you get out of the training and you're an operator, it's even more difficult to stay an operator, because the standards never go away. They only get tighter, higher, more is expected as you're out there going through your career. So they always say it's hard to get the job, it's harder to keep the job. And so everybody in my class that graduated, including myself, you're what's called a part-time member, meaning you're back in your group, you're doing your street cases, you're doing your undercovers, you're doing all your stuff, but you're responsible for meeting all of our training requirements. Like every 90 days, they would go away as a dedicated week, and you would always have to be on a plane to go wherever the training is, because they wanted you isolated. It's not, I got to run home and mow the lawn, I got to see my kids. No, there's none of that. We're training all day and all night, every 90 days. And every 90 days, you had to requalify on weapon systems, and you had to physically requalify with the SRT physical standard. If you didn't meet the standard, you better have a good reason, like an injury or something and they would allow you to retake the physical test. But if there was any problem, you were considered inactive. You couldn't go on a deployment. You couldn't go on anything. And you had 90 days to un-F that problem. And if not, there's always somebody, ready and willing to step into your helmet. And that's just the way it was. And it's good, high standards, high performance. And that's what, one of the hallmarks of an elite unit is it's like selection never ends. You're requalifying almost all the time. You're always securing your place on the team, in the program, constantly. You're always being evaluated. You're always being looked at. It's not for everybody. And so back to when I said following instructions is part of the process. Well, they give you an equipment list to show up to the shooting qualification as part of selection. You show up missing one piece of gear that they said you needed for this qual, you can reapply next year. Thank you. Thanks for wasting everybody's time, because you felt where it said you have to wear your entry ballistic vest, not your street vest, but your entry vest on this shooting qualification. You didn't show up with that. You didn't think we were serious about that. Well, yeah, if you're not going to follow directions trying to get in the door, what are you going to do when you're out there for real? So very exacting standards. And the all-important panel interview after you've gone through everything in selection, the panel interview, much like the panel interview to become an agent, the panel interview to become an operator on the SRT, that means everything, because it's going to be before a team leader and a few of the operators. And it's a robust panel interview. And if you are not the T in team player, they don't care how well you shot, how fast you ran. You did 35 pull-ups. That's great. But, it's not for everybody. Not everybody can play for ATF, and not everybody can play for the SRT. And whatever that magical thing that they want to see, you didn't have it. You didn't bring that to the interview. Or much like, the telephone game starts in and people that are already on the team say, hey, this guy is a no-go for these reasons. You're still going to get a panel interview, but when those problems manifest itself in the panel interview and you're confronted with, hey, we've heard this, we've heard that, you're not giving it 110% on your cases, you're just not a team player, special response team, that'll get you the Caesar thumbs down just as fast as anything else. And now, that all being said, the SRT program, unbelievable. Capabilities. So the capabilities of the team, when I got on in 01 and I had to leave the team mandatorily in 04 when I got promoted to be a group supervisor. Mandatory, you get promoted, unless you're promoted to the team leader, you cannot stay in the program. And that's for good reason. You're running a group, you're running a task force. You absolutely don't have time anymore for the extra training, the deployments, the jobs. It just can't be done. So there's that. But the good part is there's a whole crop of group supervisors running groups that were former SRT, and they bring that intensity, they bring that training level, they bring that just all around team good player to the fight. It's the field has been infected by many former SRT members, and that's good, really good. The capabilities that we had when I went through the initial training and the years that I was on, I thought were just cutting edge. And then when I compare it to the capabilities and training and equipment that the teams now currently have, they're absolutely just a night and day difference in capability from the crew that I was operating with. So now helicopter fast rope insertion is part of the package. explosive breaching, part of the package, night vision, part of the package, suppressed weapons, and the weapons selection also. Every M4 is the HK 416 piston upper, with the suppressor, with the military laser, with every piece of gear that came out of tier one military units. The SRT program maintained very close relationship with several of them, and we would go to training with them, and they would pass on hard-won lessons from the global war on terror, and that got put into the SRT package of movement and the way they operated. It was just a great relationship. But the capabilities are just incredible. Even right before I left, when the SRT would come in to do tactical work where I was, and I'm just looking around and I'm like, God, we didn't have any of this stuff 20 years ago. And look at you guys now. I'm so happy that you have it. It's just great. But all good. Trying to think of any other little pull the curtain back. I will say the SRT has been involved in several shooting incidents, and they've also been able to de-escalate many more incidents that would have been possibly a shooting incident, and they're able to resolve that problem without a shot being fired. They also have a drone operator, unmanned aerial vehicle operator, several of them in the SRT program, and they can deploy larger drones for an over station monitoring. They have smaller drones that they can actually fly into a residence and do a suspect search with the drones going through a house. They have robots in the program. The capabilities are just I'm so happy that they have that capability. It's necessary. As the problems of the world have grown, so has the capability of the military, and a lot of that stuff feeds into law enforcement. So, we're the beneficiaries of a lot of those hard-won lessons also. JP, I've sucked the oxygen out of the room yet again. Any craziness? I know in NYPD you guys had emergency service unit. I don't think you were in that during your time, but the way that you and your colleagues looked towards ESU, the E-Men, it's very similar the way ATF agents look at the SRT program. And most groups will handle their own tactical work, but when a few check boxes get marked of a particular violent subject, a particular what we know from intel that's going to be a difficult entry, then any group in the country can call in the SRT. Hey, we have this arrest warrant. We have a search warrant. We want to do an observation on this house for a few days. We, whatever the capabilities of the SRT, they'll bring them in and they'll conduct that mission for the group because they have the equipment, they have the training, just certain equipment that the average field agent doesn't have, the diversionary devices, a Bearcat, and they have several Bearcats in the SRT program now, and on and on and on with all the other just capabilities and many capabilities, that I would never talk about that they have, but the toolbox is deep with little gadgets, tricks, and techniques. If you're a bad guy and you see SRT coming down a driveway, first of all, you should never see them coming down a driveway. The first inkling that they're there should be when somebody steps into your bedroom and says, peekaboo, look at you. Robust capability of the teams. They're good. If I was ever being held at gunpoint, I would want my old SRT buddies coming in to save the day. And I would be 100% confident in their abilities to fix that problem. And I actually did have them on a few of my undercovers. I remember one in particular where we did a buy bust. So I'm off the team. I think it was right after I got promoted, but I was still wrapping up some of my undercovers. So it was going to be a fairly simple buy bust. I'm going to buy the guns. Bad guys are in the car in front of me, and they're going to be arrested. So it's a buy bust pretty much. And I remember the team just kind of rolling past me after they got the signal. They're in a van. The passenger is all SRT'd out. He's kind of winks at me. I think it was you, Rob R. I think you're retired now, but you gave me that little wink. I saw the flashbang in your hand, and right next to the car, boom, right on the windshield. Both of those guys later said that they actually thought they had been killed. And by the time they realized they had not been killed, they were in handcuffs and it was over. Nobody hurt. Everybody lived to breathe air another day. So that was the one time they actually did a buy bust on one of my undercovers. It was awesome. In Brooklyn. Yeah. I think we all went out for pizza later that night. It was awesome. I think they made me buy. I was glad to. But yeah, that's the kind of the gloss over. And so back then, so another interesting thing. So when I started the ATF Academy in 1998, I mean, the internet was in its infancy. There were no iPhones. The Academy was kind of a black hole. There was no like, hey, I can go watch a documentary. I can go watch a podcast. I can go watch an interview. Unless you knew agents, that had gone through it recently. And when I went through the most recent class, I think it was 4 or 5 years before. So even if I, had gotten a skinny from one of them, it's a little different. And it was. But I went down there with the attitude of I am going to eat, live, and breathe this. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was great. There you go. The ATF Academy in a nutshell.